All right, welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Josh Mendlinger, with my partner, Taco Thompson, here to talk about the University of Georgia Bulldog football game between the hedges up in Athens and the beating 24-10 of the South Carolina Gamecocks. It was an enjoyable game to watch. It was a well-balanced game, if you would like to say that, for the Georgia offense as well as for the defense, holding the Gamecocks to only 10 points. That's a good thing. And what was really nice to see, what I picked out was the fact that Jake Fromm was throwing the ball efficiently, effectively, and with confidence. And I think the touchdown passes that he had shows that they have more than a one-trick pony with the running game. What do you say, Taco?
That was a little bit of the comment from the papers, the media, which is we.
Yes.
Enjoy talking fodder and hearing bulletin board material. We'll jump on that if we can in a heartbeat. But yeah, they said they can't pass it. Well, in this game, Fromm threw it 22 times. That is the second most attempts since the game at Notre Dame. I think he threw it 29 times in the game at Notre Dame. But Fromm was out there throwing some nice passes, spread it around. Godwin, Wims, Hardman, 5 or 6 of the receivers for Georgia. Wims caught 5, Godwin had 3, Hardman had 3, Nada 1, Michelle, Chubb 1 each, and along with Ridley and Blazevich. So, yes, a good pass balance against the run. Chubb did get another 100-yard game. Michelle had his 81 yards. But one of the keys of the game for Georgia is the time of possession. Georgia repeatedly converted first downs, had I think 26 first downs in the game, and kept the ball for upwards of 38 minutes in a game, and that's good ball control. So it keeps the pressure off of the defense and forced Carolina to probably pass more than they did. If you look at the balance from the defensive side of the ball for Georgia stopped the run, which they had to do,
yes,
and forced Carolina to throw. And I just don't think the quarterback Bentley from Carolina, although he threw it well, Georgia had a couple of sacks on him and maybe completed a couple of passes that had a couple of the dogs out of position. But he was only able to get 21 completed out of 35 and threw 2 INTs in the game. So the Bulldogs on the whole, again, holding through, not a blowout win with 24 points, but you never really felt like the game was out of control.
I agree with you on that one, Taco. The game seemed to be popular with everyone, as it always is up in Athens. The tailgating was big. The representation was strong. The game, the play by Kirby Smart's team continues to be effective and promising for the Georgia Bulldogs, and I think the fans are enjoying this. They're enjoying the winning that's going on. It's a kind of a fallback to good old times, good old days for the Georgia Bulldog Nation, and I think they're happy to have a winning team that they can get behind and support and not feel that week to week they have to worry, basically, and panic.
Well, this was we kind of knew it coming in. We're going to talk a little bit about the opponent next week, maybe even tougher. But South Carolina came in here with a 6-2 record, and
number 2 in the East.
Sure enough, Muschamp and his crew were coming down to try to put a hurt on the Bulldogs. But again, I'll go back to the play calling. The play calling was good. You had enough runs when you needed the run, and I mentioned, threw some really nice passes, and Wims caught a great touchdown pass there.
I think his arm and his effectiveness there was as good as anyone I've seen in the country right now. I think the speed and touch that he has on the ball is up there with just about anybody that's throwing in the NCAA.
Yeah. So I guess the comments out of the Carolina locker room about he can't throw might be a little overrated.
Right.
But again, I thought South Carolina, and if you look at what South Carolina did against the rush, the Georgia offensive, the Red Brigade, as I call it, was not up in the 8-yard stratosphere of carry. So the 4.5 yards per carry. So Carolina did have some game planning to stop some of that Georgia rush. But Chaney had a game plan to call, still not putting Fromm in any extraordinary situations to have to do anything or have any miracles. And you just always felt like the Georgia offense was plugging along. That offensive line continues to be steady. Fromm didn't have any sacks, as I recall, on this weekend. And so, again, you got to credit the offensive line and a little bit more of the wide open pass, not quite wide open. I wouldn't call 22 passes wide open, but it's a little bit more passes than Georgia fans have seen. So they should be pleased to see that the Georgia offense can have more balance when it needs to be, and I think that's key.
All right, I think we were talking about that before the coming on air at the show. They were talking that there were a little bit more passes, 29 against Notre Dame up in South Bend. But, that may have been just because of pure, necessity more than game plan at that point.
Yeah, we've thrown it as little as 7 times in a game.
Yeah, that was last week. Yeah, the week before.
So
I agree. I think the Georgia Bulldogs with Jake Fromm have a consistent player there now. And I think, as we've been seeing all season, the Bulldogs are going to have a player that hopefully will be around for 4 years if all things go well. Knock on wood.
Maybe 3.
Injury, well, maybe 3. Yeah, may only be 3. Hopefully 4. But exactly that. My point is that it's good to have somebody we can rely on, or not we, but the University of Georgia can rely on week to week, consistent to be game management in the quarterback position and not turn the ball over. And I think that's been an important aspect of the Georgia Bulldog game on all components, both on the special teams and on the offense. They have not had a lot of turnovers giving the ball back to the other team, and that is an effective or a great way to stay ahead of your opponents.
And we were ahead in the turnover game in this game, which is always critical in an SEC game, and also, that's a credit to the defense as well. Getting back to the guys, the Roquan Smiths, the Carters, Bakers, Reed, the interceptions. J.R. Reed had 1 INT. Malcolm Parrish came in and had a pick. So, give it credit to the defense for holding out the Gamecocks from being able to get their offense going. As you mentioned, 10 points is all they can muster. And again, that strong Georgia defense continues to show its fierceness against SEC opponents.
Well, I tell you what, let's get back. We'll get back in a moment. We'll take a short break, and we'll come back, and we'll get into some more detail about individual stats of players, get into the running back duo that everyone is focusing on, one of the if not the best duo in the backfield for football this year, of Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. We'll talk about them as well as a few other highlights as from the South Carolina game for the Georgia Bulldogs. So we'll take a brief moment off, and we'll be right back on DawgDial. Stick with us here from Buffalo's Cafe in Woodstock, Georgia. Be right back. Go Dogs. All right, we are back here on DawgDial. Welcome, folks. I'm your host, Josh Mendlinger, with Taco Thompson, my partner here in crime at Buffalo's Cafe in Woodstock, Georgia. Thanks for joining us again. We are broadcasting on a network of radio stations and on Facebook Live each week, talking about your Georgia Bulldogs sports, especially football during the football season. Right now, if you would care to send in any comments or messages for us or participate with us, we'd love to have people write in and chat with us. You can reach us on the Twitter handle at DawgDial, as well as on Facebook. If you're watching on Facebook anywhere, sign on and go to DawgDial and check us out, and feel free to submit your comments and messages to us as we go throughout the day or anytime during the week. We'll be more than happy to involve your comments and questions with our show each week. So, Taco, the South Carolina game, the duo of Chubb and Michelle out of the backfield, doing well once again.
And a few of the other guys got in there. Holyfield was not in this game. I'm not exactly sure why we didn't see him. Maybe we'll get a report this week. But, yeah, the offensive game was there. The passing game was there. The defense was there. We kicked 1 for 1 for field goal. But, there was one thing in this game that we broke our 100% record on. Do you know what that is, or do you remember?
Would that be the red zone offense?
That is the red zone.
That would be.
The Bulldogs failed on the one attempt in the red zone for this game. So now we're like 99.499%.
Well, last time I checked, that's still a pretty high level. It's a pretty good grade for them. So I think we could give them a pretty positive grade on that. An A, a 99.9. I can only hope that my kids have that grade. Those grades going on throughout the school year. But perfect is a nice thing. But we are not striving for perfect in this world. When we have our expectations for the Bulldogs, we just want excellence. Doesn't have to be perfect, but excellence and very good is definitely a better pattern than losing.
There's still a 0 attached to the Georgia Bulldogs, and that's in the loss column.
That is true.
So it's always good to look at those statistics.
Yes, and no ties either. So.
Well, and the beauty, hey, look at
you.
You've clinched. Kentucky lost the game against Ole Miss, and most of the players didn't know it after the game, but that was the key to Georgia clinching the SEC East title. So you're here early in November, and you already have the SEC East title, and so you got to give credit to the Dogs for being able to do that. I know we're not going to have any championship trophy presentations.
Not yet.
For the SEC East championship.
I don't think that will be allowed.
There's still some things to play, but we can also go around and talk a little bit. With that happening, as I just mentioned around the SEC, you talk about some of the other games that might have an impact. I mean, every Georgia fan is obviously watching the Alabama Crimson Tide. So the Tide, in a fairly pedestrian effort for them, played an improving LSU team, 24-10.
Same score as the Bulldogs.
And Mississippi State played a non-conference opponent, beat UMass. Missouri just absolutely ran up, chomped.
Yeah, chomped.
Can we say chomped?
I guess you could say that, yes.
The Gators.
They did chomp on the Gators.
Yeah, they did a chomp. And I guess that interim head coach thing or that McElwain thing that they got to deal with down there is going to be a little bit more serious. Maybe the Heat's going to
I'd have to say, it's a distraction. And that's one thing that every coach tries to minimize throughout the school year and throughout the season. It's the distractions that cause these young adults, and that's what they are. And distractions cause the professional athletes and professionals to lose games, as we've seen across the many years at the professional level. But on the college level, distractions in that game for whatever it might be, whether it's just high ratings and AP polls, number one polls, and it is poison. It's the rat poison, as they have mentioned.
That's going to be a great theme for. I mean, I wonder if that's going to make it into next year. But yeah, you see the coaches, you see the Muschamps, the Kirby Smarts, the Nick Sabans of the world. They do get out there and try to prevent this big-headedness, this gloating nature that can happen amongst 18 to 22-year-olds who can certainly get full of themselves by listening to all the accolades, and we're as guilty of it as anybody. But, anything can happen, and finishing up the SEC East, Arkansas squeaked one out against Coastal. Tennessee, Coastal,
the baseball team, right?
The Chanticleers.
Yeah,
they're the Chanticleers.
Yeah, they're known for baseball.
They are. They're a good baseball team out of Myrtle Beach. Tennessee, Butch Jones may be regaining some steam with a win over at Southern Mississippi on Saturday. But the real impact, if you look at what was going on, the SEC, Georgia clinches. Alabama looks like they're soundly in the driver's seat. We'll talk about another game that went on was Auburn and Texas A&M, and it's got to be raising some eyebrows amongst the UGA fans that Auburn took on a very good Texas A&M team and ran it up 42-27 against the Aggies.
Well, that's something we're going to be looking for next week when the Bulldogs travel to Auburn to play that Auburn team, and the Tigers down there are tough.
Yeah, we're going to get into some of these stats, Auburn as compared to Georgia, but Auburn was ranked 14 coming into this weekend, and we'll see what happens. Really, the only poll that matters now is Tuesday's college football rankings, but you got to figure Auburn's going to move up. Amongst the national scheme of things, though, there were some things happening in the Big Ten.
Absolutely.
That really
seem to be
changed
falling.
the dynamic.
No doubt. There seems to be some losing streaks.
Which conference is going to be in there? So, and we'll play at the end of the segment. I want to play the what-if scenario and talk about conferences and national polls and what could happen the rest of the season. So it would be interesting. There's still a lot of football to be played. The next opponent being Auburn for Georgia. And that's going to be in Auburn. But you saw the impact of a pretty strong conference up through Week 8 with the Big Ten. You've got Wisconsin, who's still undefeated. You've got the happenings on the Big Ten East side of things with Michigan State. They have a possibility now to be in the game against what it looks like the Western opponent. Wisconsin still undefeated, but Penn State has obviously fallen. Ohio State fell in a huge loss against Iowa on Saturday night. So a lot can happen in college football, and it's only a matter of a week or two when that can happen.
That's for certain, and I think that's what makes the college football game that much more exciting than the professional game from our standpoint, that it is a shorter season and every game counts, and that every stat seems to count down to this point.
And the interesting dynamic now that we get to talk about it, I know people were talking about 4-game, 8-game. Maybe this may be a segment for a whole nother show, but what I think really makes this thing exciting is a 4-team playoff. You got to play your tail off in college football to be in position for those top 4 spots. And Notre Dame, looking back, as far as Georgia fans are concerned, the win against Notre Dame, it looks even better. Notre Dame continues to go on a tear, won their game Saturday night against Wake Forest in predominant fashion. So they were putting up some points. So the quarterback for Notre Dame, Wimbush, who Georgia contained in a relatively good manner, was running all up and down the field against Wake Forest. So the win against Notre Dame, a 1-point win. Notre Dame, without the Big Ten in there, there's only one real featured team in the ACC, which is Clemson, and they still have some ball to play. But the Pac-12 and the Big Ten got hit, and the Big 12 still has Oklahoma. But there's some people with questions about Oklahoma. You saw they had a game on Saturday night.
That was a big game, yes.
The shootout.
Bedlam, yes.
A non-defensive game.
Yeah, there
was a lot of points scored there.
There were. It was over 100 points for the first. It was the highest scoring points for that the Bedlam game that in history. So that was quite a shootout. You are correct. That's the best way to put it. That those teams.
So a lot goes on to affect the playoff, which I think is really neat in the game. So you've got 2 SEC teams there. You can talk about strength of schedule. You can talk about conference. You can talk about non-conference wins. There are a lot of factors that go into this, but it's pretty neat. And I would expect after Tuesday night when they have the show, I would still think that Georgia, Bama are still going to be 1 and 2. The interesting thing, as a segue maybe to our next segment, is interestingly enough, the odds makers have Auburn in this game against Georgia as I saw it early, as a 2.5-point favorite to actually beat the Bulldogs.
Well, I think that might be because it's on the road and it's in Auburn. I think they were getting the nod ahead of time just because it's a home game for them. We'll see what that later this week, how that comes out. Things typically with those guys typically seem to, I won't say even out, but they will change throughout the week when injury reports coming on, but also when they get to look back at the tape a little bit and see how well that Fromm was throwing the ball and the effectiveness there and the health as each week goes by and we get more players back from whatever reason, whether it's injury or suspension or anything like that. The Bulldogs certainly seem to be getting better, and I think that will change. What do you think? That'll stay at Auburn getting the nod?
Just wondering what they're watching. Just wondering what they're seeing, if they and the points are tougher to call. And I know Georgia didn't cover the spread; they came in as 21-point favorites.
Right.
I think Alabama was a 4-touchdown favorite in their game.
Sure.
And you have to play these games, and turnovers can happen, and injuries, as you said, can happen,
and distractions, and
balls
I think
can bounce the wrong way.
Today's players, they
any
hear,
given Saturday.
Yeah, they hear and they see all the media hype. They hear and they see about all the point spreads and what they're favored, and again, that becomes a distraction that we talked to about shortly, just ago, and not to, and the fact
with
that these kids, with the Gators and everybody else, just it's they're young adults, and that will happen, and they will get full of themselves as we see plenty of celebrating going on the sidelines. Sometimes I think a little too early in these games, and I think the right coach will have them controlled, and I think Kirby Smart is dialing them in, no doubt, this season as showing their 9-0 record and the way they handle themselves. Hopefully they can go into Auburn and not think that they're going to stomp on Auburn, but hopefully they can go in there with an air of confidence, but execute and not have any ridiculous problems with penalties and just distractions from the crowd, because it will be a noisy crowd in Auburn. There's no doubt.
Yeah, I think the staff has done a very good job, the coaching staff, Coach Smart, of instilling a workmanlike atmosphere week in, week out. There's good senior leadership on the Georgia Bulldogs team. Combine those two together with serious talent on the field and a good game plan. Hey, the Georgia Dogs have been playing it well so far this season.
Well, let's take a quick short break here on the DawgDial as well as on the Facebook Live. We'll come right back. I understand we got to fix a little something on Facebook Live with our audio, but we'll be right back. Stick with us, Dog fans. We'll be right back on DawgDial. Joking if it's honest. All right, testing 1, 2, 3. Hopefully we're back on. Testing 1, 2. All right, we are back here on DawgDial. We are in Woodstock, Georgia, and we are on Facebook Live from Buffalo's Cafe on Highway 92 in Woodstock, as we are each week. Love to have you come down and join us here for our shows and enjoy some of the great food and the atmosphere here in Woodstock, Georgia. The hosts and the management here have been great this season. We look forward to the rest of the season here. Today we are out on the deck here, and it's quite nice out here at Buffalo's on the deck. So we're enjoying it. Come join us if you'd like. Send your feedback into us again through Twitter or on Facebook Live. You can write into us or comment into us. Let's mention that our flagship radio station is Real Country Q 92.3 WMOQ FM out of Athens, Monroe. And if you'd like to have a copy of today's podcast or any other shows or episodes of DawgDial, simply go to iTunes and search for DawgDial in the podcast section. Taco, Auburn. They always play tough, no matter what the season or what the year it is. Bulldogs sometimes have a difficulty going there. I think that, as you mentioned earlier, that they may be a little underdog status right now, but for the most part, I think the Bulldogs will go in there and take care of business. Yet Auburn is always tough. The Tigers are tough. They play. It's a loud audience. It's a great atmosphere for football. It should be exciting, and the question is whether or not that'll be the most, I guess you could say, aggressive fans from as the freshmen to face.
The Deep South's oldest rivalry coming up here, going to Auburn. It will be a serious contest. I think something that serious Bulldog fans will be biting their nails a little bit about this week, because it's not a barrier now to the SEC East Championship, but it is a barrier when you start to look at that college football playoff and having to be in that top four teams. Obviously now Georgia fans know that they're going to be at Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz Dome to take on the SEC West opponent. But yes, Georgia fans have been dealing with this Auburn-Georgia Deep South rivalry since 1892. There have been 120 games. Georgia does lead the overall series 57-55 with 8 ties. And the first game, here's a nugget for you.
Bring it out. Taco's Nuggets.
First game in 1899 was played where?
1899. Was it played, I don't know, in a Civil War battlefield? I don't know. What
there might be a monument down there. But,
hopefully not torn down recently, but yes.
Atlanta's Piedmont Park. How about that?
Well, that's actually pretty close. I must say that was probably not far off from a battlefield.
Interesting arrangements there.
Yes.
But Auburn won that contest, too,
yeah.
10-0. So you got to wonder. 1892, I don't even know I think they were wearing one of our leather helmets.
Yeah,
back in the
they probably
days.
had leather helmets or
fold
if at
up
all.
and put back in your back pocket. But certainly it's it is a rivalry. So Georgia has its Georgia-Florida rivalry, but Auburn is a rivalry simply because Auburn recruits very heavily in the state of Georgia, with it being just across the state lines, and Auburn kind of straddles that picking from Alabama kids and Georgia kids and Florida kids. So, and Gus Malzahn coaching at Auburn, he's no slouch when it comes to being able to coach in the SEC, and he's brought the Auburn. I think the Auburn faithful are pleased with where Auburn is relative to the early standings in the season. So it's going to be a battle with Auburn at Auburn, as you said, hostile territory, not an easy place to play. So Georgia's going to have to bring another one of those pedestrian games to Auburn win this game.
That's for certain. They'll keep with it. The fact is, Auburn, you don't hear a lot about any individual superstars out for that team. Now, I'm sure they obviously do have excellent players. They have some very good players, but you don't hear the Heisman hopeful. You don't hear coming out of there. You don't hear the SEC Player of the Year coming out of Auburn. However, their season is going fairly well, and I think it's a good distribution of talent there.
I think
as it always is.
There's talented players and they're well coached. So I mean, if you start to look down through, and I'll throw out some of the key statistics here, after their impressive victory against Texas A&M, you got to feel like they will have some good momentum coming into the game. But if you look at points per game, Auburn can score 38.5 points a game so far this season. Georgia's at 35.9 points a game. Yards per game, Auburn is putting up 460, Georgia 444. Rushing yards per game, Auburn's rushing game not quite as potent, but right in there with Georgia. Flipping over, I think one of the differences in this ball game, and we can talk about some of what we think the keys are going to be, I think it's going to be on defense in this game, where Auburn is giving up more yards, giving up 315 a game, as opposed to Georgia giving up 254. Auburn has a rushing attack that gives up 129 a game. Georgia only giving up 97 a game. Auburn giving up 185, which is ranked 13 in the nation. Georgia only giving up 157 a game, which is fourth in the nation. So I think one of the key and the big differences in this game will be Georgia's defense. Can Auburn put points on the board versus the Georgia defense?
And that's been a difficult thing for all opponents this year. The Georgia defense has been stout. The Georgia defense has stepped up. I don't remember any significant injuries coming out of this past weekend to the defense that I noted.
We'll have one of our starters who was suspended, Patrick, who was suspended for 4 games. He's coming back. He'll be back for this game for Georgia.
That's
but
true.
Yeah, injuries, we seem to be doing okay on the injury front. So we'll be stocked and ready. But can Auburn score against this Georgia team? Now, I think one of the other keys to this game is obviously going to be penalties and turnovers. I think it may, a field goal miss here, there, but I think holding possession of the ball for Auburn, if they're going to have any chance of winning against Georgia, I think Georgia has the potency, either running or passing, to be able to score on Auburn. But the question to me is, can Auburn get anything going against this Georgia defense? Nobody has so far.
That's true, and that's been a great part of this season. The defense holding its own, holding opponents to minimal points, and actually coming in and being feared. You can almost say the opponents are looking for them on how to get around. They have to scheme. They have to come up with new ways to beat this Georgia defense. Going right up the middle is difficult against them, and the backfield, the defensive backs and safeties have been playing excellent coverage football, causing coverage sacks, and as well as limiting deep threats.
A few plays, but yeah, you're right. Georgia's defense, if you look at it, is playing fairly straight up, or at least in this game did, with the 4-man front, the 4-man pass rush, with drops in the middle zones for the linebackers. Georgia had a few blown coverages. I think Coach Smart said one blown assignment, one just got open. So a couple of those things did happen, but Georgia has not really shown a heavy blitz package so far in this season. So depending on the dynamic, I think you're going to see play calling really come into play in this game against Auburn, to where you're going to have to make in-game adjustments, and the play calling is really going to come down to what is Auburn giving on their defensive side of the ball, what is Auburn trying to do. So it's going to be a big game to me for Jim Chaney and Tucker, the defensive coordinator, to call a really good game this Saturday in order for Georgia to stay in it.
All right, well, we'll talk about that in a few moments. We'll take a quick break here on DawgDial and come right back. What we want to talk about when we come back is a couple of those plays. What plays do you think are going to be the ones that are pulled out of the pocket by the offensive coordinator or anything super special or different. We'll talk about that in just a moment. We'll be right back on DawgDial. Stick with us, folks. All right, folks, welcome back to DawgDial. We are here again at Buffalo's Cafe in Woodstock, Georgia, coming to you with Georgia Bulldog Sports and Sports Talk from our live patio today, which is great to see the folks coming and going here at Buffalo's. Taco, what'd you go with? What type of wings did you start the day with here today? Just to
I'm going to go with the hot.
Going with the hot today.
With the fire hot today here
there
at Buffalo's.
Oh, sounds good to me. I think I'm going to stick with some lemon pepper today. Good choice here, as always. Folks, come on down, join us, or join the folks here at Buffalo's at any time. Get your all-you-can-eat wing nights, wing bash nights whenever you want to. Believe you can check out their website, and those are on, what is it, Monday, Wednesdays, the wing bash? I believe it is down here. So come join us or come grab yourself some great food. Let's get back to SEC football and the Georgia Bulldogs going down to Auburn or over to Auburn this upcoming week. And it should be a good battle. It always is. Just wanted to chat about with you or ask you, what do the Bulldogs need to do, Taco? What offensive plays do they need to pull out and really focus on? Obviously, the running game is key. With Sony Michel and with Nick Chubb, what else do the Bulldogs need to pull out of their or out of their sleeves, or
Well, it's interesting. Coach Smart threw out a interesting curve this week, and started out the game with a onside kick. It was a failed attempt. It was a good execution on the kick that Auburn just recovered. So, but I think what you see from the Georgia coaching staff is, and what Coach Smart said after the game was, we're not playing defensive. We're going to play offensively. We're going to play aggressively, so we're going to play our game. The less predictable you are in the SEC, especially in these big games, the better off you're going to be. They all watch the tape. They all watch the films.
Right. And they all know each other. All the coaches are coming almost a pedigree out of
falling from about the same tree. Absolutely.
Yeah,
so
the Saban tree.
But I would say, look at this. Georgia's been balanced all season long. We, as fans and media, have been watching Jake Fromm and play his steady and persistent game. And I think, honestly, this may be the first game that Fromm may have to carry the game on his shoulders, at least for a bit. So you may not seen many streaks. You may not have seen many long balls. I expect a long ball or two, or at least a couple of attempts in this game. I certainly expect Georgia to be able to establish their running game inside, and that's what coaches do in a game. Is you watch the man-to-man matchups against the offensive line versus the defensive line. So offensively, Georgia obviously has the potency and the power, but it's getting in those second and third down situations. Can Georgia convert? They were 8 of 13 this past week converting in third down. So offensively, hey, we may see it open up a little bit. Hopefully that doesn't lead to INTs. Fromm has been efficient, so that's one of the things that you look at and say, well, if you start to open this thing up, what happens?
That's true. I think, what do you think about his passes to the end zone? He had some great touch on the ball. His accuracy, putting it where only his receivers can grab it and score, or the ball's going out of bounds. I think he read the defense as well. I think he put the ball right where it needed to be.
I saw Fromm make multiple reads, and there was some talk about that as he's being able to look, do his checkdowns and actually see through to other receivers. You haven't seen Fromm really throw directly into traffic, into triple coverage, into a linebacker cutting across.
Well,
so
let me ask you this: He's obviously managing the game well. He's doing well. He's not turning the ball over with ridiculous plays, which many, I won't even just say freshmen. That could be any player coming in starts to do that, can have that type of game. Hopefully, it's not in Auburn. Hopefully, that doesn't show up. Don't want to jinx it any way, shape, or form. But from what do you think about the way he is actually stepping up and progressing through this season? Is the game slowing down for him? Is that part of it?
I think he's growing, no doubt. In-game experience, there's nothing like it. But the nerves. You saw a couple of games on Saturday where the quarterback got into a situation where he was under pressure. So that pressure does get to a quarterback. You have to feel like you have to make those throws. The mentality of Jake Fromm, I think, is really, really good. This kid has a good head on his shoulders. He's steady. The play calling again from the box upstairs. Haven't asked him to do too much, but I think this coaching staff and Fromm, after having been in this 9 games, now you're playing with the big boys. Now you are a big boy. The freshman talk, true freshman talk, is over.
Right.
There's plenty of other true freshmen playing in this league and have competed well. So I wouldn't be afraid to see or have to put Jake Fromm in a situation where he's got to make up some big plays and make some big throws, and it may even happen in this game Saturday with his feet. He hasn't had to come out of the pocket very much. Pass protection has been good this year, unlike last year.
Yeah, right.
So you can credit the offensive line for that.
I think the offensive line has to give all the credit, not all of it, but much of the credit for this success this season. I think protecting the quarterback has been key. And opening up those, doing their job, really. Just doing their job, doing it well, and opening up the holes and keeping their quarterback safe is important with any team, and success-wise.
And spreading the ball out. This game here with the 22 passes, you had 6-7 receivers touching the ball. As far as play calling this week, we had 2 tight end catches. We talked about this real early in the season. Where's the tight end for Georgia in Georgia's offense?
Nada has not been there, I guess you could say.
Not had to been used. So more from a blocking standpoint, he's a great blocking tight end.
Both of the tight ends that have stood out this year are.
So the playbook hasn't been totally opened up yet. Hasn't had to. So
why give it all away, right?
And that is a game of chess that this is in the SEC. So if you put it on tape, it's going to be out there for them to analyze and game plan for. So it is some of that going on, and like you said, these coaches know each other. They know how to game plan for each other. But if you're unpredictable, that onside kick attempt is part of that unpredictability that you want the other staff to have when you're going into a game.
Got to make them think. That's for certain. Man.
Special teams may be a big factor too in this game. What Georgia hasn't had is major runbacks. I mean, this has been a steady offensive defensive effort all year. The same goes on the other side of the ball to prevent Auburn from having any big plays in the special teams. That is an important dimension into this game. So a special teams play here or there, which hasn't really affected any momentum or any part of Georgia's game this year, very well could come into play on Saturday.
Well, I think that's a great thing to look for fans, Dog Nation fans. Taco, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back and recap some thoughts about and predictions, and ask you, give me a points prediction for this game in a moment. We'll take a quick break, come right back to do that, and also got a couple of other questions we're coming up with, and we'll look to see if we have any questions from our fans out there on Facebook Live or on our Twitter handle. Please stick with us. We'll be right back on DawgDial. All right, welcome back to DawgDial here on the CRM Radio Network, Broadcasting Network. We are at Buffalo's Cafe in Woodstock, Georgia. I am your host, Josh Mendlinger, with my partner, Taco Thompson, and we are getting ready to recap our show today. We talked about, obviously, the win in against South Carolina up in Athens. A good win, a good showing against a very good team. The clinching of the SEC East. I won't call it a title, but let's call it the East side. It's not. I don't like to say the word title because really the only title in the SEC that truly matters is the final one. It is nice that Kirby Smart got a good bonus. I'm not sure if you saw that, Taco. By winning the SEC East, he got about $140,000.
Buy a
bonus.
few groceries.
Yeah, he can buy a few groceries, a few things with that. I'm sure his family are very happy. Congratulations to Kirby Smart on that. I guess in the grand scheme of things, he has earned it with his coaching this year. Hopefully he is taking care of the rest of his coaching staff because obviously the coaching staff, they don't make quite what the head coach is making, but you know what? They are getting paid pretty good. That's for certain. All across the country in these major programs.
Making a few bones.
They are.
They are. But no, so far it earned. So far you're playing at a high level football. I don't think many Georgia fans would have predicted that Georgia would be 9-0 going into Auburn and feel after having a dominating season for the most part. Notre Dame was relatively close. The game this past weekend was not a blowout, but a lot of the other games have been. And, you know, the gauntlet of the SEC, maybe not at its peak and to previous years, but you got to give credit to the coaching staff in their second year with seniors returning that possibly been playing in NFL. And even with all of those things factored in, for Georgia Bulldogs to be 9-0 and even number one in the college football bowl rankings, at least the first time that it came out last week.
We'll see this Tuesday.
Got to be pretty pleased, yeah.
I think the Dog Nation is. I think many people saw the potential for this when Eason went down in that with that non-contact injury. I think the collective sigh, I don't say sigh, but the collective ugh moment there was everyone was a little nervous, even knowing that Jake Fromm was there as a backup, obviously as an unproven commodity as a true freshman, but he has certainly stepped up. And his value is going through the roof here. And what's I think now he one of the other things that he has going for him is that he's not looking over his shoulder anymore. He's not looking whether or not Eason is warming up on the sideline and ready to be brought in. He could be at any moment. That could be part of the rest of the season as far as a dynamic for the coaches to throw a little curveball to one of these other opponents. But you know, I think he's getting comfortable behind the center.
Yeah, I think so, and I don't think we'll see Eason too much more the rest of the season. Maybe a Kentucky blowout. Maybe he might get some time. Georgia Tech is next, so that's the slate for Georgia. You've got to go to Auburn. You got to get things done, and then finish out the regular season at Kentucky and Georgia Tech. And the reason why these three games are important is, again, going back to that college football poll. Now you're playing for it, and two SEC teams are in the top four. So if you play the what-if scenario, so the what-if there's a one-loss SEC team, either be it Alabama or Georgia, going to the Dome, then it could be a two-loss SEC team in the Dome, or after the December game in the SEC championship. So you might have one team being the one rank or 4 seed, and the other team a two-loss SEC. A lot has been happening in college football, so can two SEC teams get into the championship? We've seen the blow-up in the Big Ten. The Big 12 is coming on towards the end of the season. Pac-12 is a long shot. Notre Dame being an independent being in there. So, again, still a lot goes on. I can understand why the College Football Playoff Committee doesn't meet until October the 31st. because even with the 3 games to play and then the conference championships for all those who have conference championships, there's going to be some impact. There's still a lot of movement out there before decisions are made about who's going to be playing for the national championship. But a 2-loss team has played for a national championship before.
That is for certain. It is going to be an interesting remainder of the season as far as the decision-making going on by this playoff committee. I do not envy them by any way, shape, or form as far as that. Not that they have the worst volunteer job in the world to fly in and have to make those decisions and meet and probably eat some pretty good grub while they're doing it. But it's still it's still important to show up the remainder of the season. You can't take the foot off the throttle as far as the Bulldogs doing that. And
Georgia can't do that Saturday, no, and I don't think so. We'll talk about predictions here, and I'll give you my prediction. I think this is another strong showing for Georgia. I'm seeing Georgia come out of this game a 10-point win. I'm predicting a 31-21 so far this season. I had Georgia undefeated getting to here, and I had them winning this game. I don't see it any differently. I'm not the smartest tool in the shed. I'm not in Vegas. I don't have all of those resources ahead of me, but Georgia's not a turnover team. No. They don't turn the ball over. They have a good rushing game, a proficient passing game, and they got one of the top defenses of the nation. Bring that to Auburn and keep playing the same game. I just don't see where this fictional point spread comes in that shows Auburn a 2.5-point favorite. I just don't see it. Well,
they are ranked number 14, and obviously with this past week of losses by some of these top teams, anything is possible. However, I agree with you on the Georgia win. They do need to go in there and they need to maintain their own persona. They need to continue doing what they're doing best this season. I agree. I think they need to make sure that they're not trying to come up with anything too whiz-bang fancy as far as offensive plays. Stick with what's working, and that'll get them through this. Whether or not it's a blowout or not, I don't think Dog fans really care. They just want the W at the end of the day.
I think you go here, you take care of business at Auburn, you get back home to Athens, and then play it out at Georgia Tech and Atlanta, and you get ready for the December 2 schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And the SEC East Championship, you already know you're going to play there. So Georgia fans have got to be real comfortable with the fact that, hey, we're going to be playing for the SEC Championship. But this game against Auburn is critical when you talk about the overall scheme, and that's why we talk about in the show the scheme of the landscape of what's happening in college football, because it does have an impact on Georgia should something bad happen, throughout here at the end of the season.
There's no doubt. Everyone is looking for, as far as the playoff committee to decide, will they put a one-loss, two SEC teams in? If one has one loss, one doesn't. That is certainly something we don't even want to give them, but the University of Georgia does not want to even give them food for thought on that. They need to just go in there, take care of business, run the table as we predicted earlier in the season or at the beginning of the season, and just make things happen. I think the Bulldogs can do that. Let's make sure they take care of business, but also make sure they stay healthy on the field and off the field, because it's obviously coming down to the end of the semester. We definitely don't need any players being disqualified for the remainder of the semester, so hopefully they're taking care of business in the classroom just as much as they are on the field, at the practice field.
So if they stay away from the poison,
that's for sure.
My prediction, Dogs win it.
Dogs win it. I like it. I'm going to go with the W point spread. I think they're going to be, a good 14 points. I'm going to go with 2 touchdowns over Auburn, and think that they're going to pull that off and come back for the Kentucky game in Athens, between the hedges, 10-0 on the season, raring to go for another big game and a big party, I would have to say at that point, even more so up in Athens, Georgia. So I tell you what, that'll be exciting. Let's see what happens at the end of this weekend.
Good times.
You bet, Taco. Well, let's wrap it up. We are here at the end of our 10th show of the season on DawgDial. We'd like to thank everybody for joining us. We'd like to thank everybody here at Buffalo's, our hosts and our servers and management, for taking care of us and allowing us to broadcast from their patio outside here at the Buffalo's in Woodstock on Highway 92. Let's take care of a few of the requirement business. The executive producer of DawgDial is John Rawl. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Thanks to my co-host Taco Thompson here. And special thanks to, once again, to any of our staff here at Buffalo's. I'm Josh Mendlinger. Thank you for listening. DawgDial is a production of CRM Sports. For more info, visit crmsports.com on the web. And as we like to say on DawgDial and everyone else in Dog Nation,
go Dogs.
Dogs.